grouping of first problems that the early church had. If you were a Gentile, that is a non-Jewish person, Greek or whatever, and you became a Christian, did you have to be circumcised, as the Jews were? And the church was being split over it. So they came together. They came together with a meeting with the apostles, and they prayed and asked the Spirit to lead and guide them. And they said, no, you don't have to, because in baptism we are changed and transformed into the image of Christ himself. It's God's gift to us. But even since the earliest days, the church has always been struggling. There's always been difficulties in the church. We've had a number of issues and a number of councils over the years to try to keep faithful to the gospel, to try to make known what Jesus has asked of us. Our church today is still in trouble. Our church is wandering today. We live in a troubled church and we live in a troubled world. No, we live in a troubled church and a troubled world. And Pope Francis was making every effort to try to rectify these things by calling the Synod. You looked at the church in Europe one time. Countries like Germany and France are basically now very secular. Very few people attend church. In Canada, it's not much better. In the census of 2011, 70% of the people said they were Christian. 10 years later, in 2021, only 52% of the people in Canada said they were Christian. And the biggest group of people were 35% who said, we have no religion whatsoever. Yeah. If you asked how many people in Canada, how many Catholics go to Mass on Sunday, it's under 15%. It's under 15%. So what do we do for our church? How do we make the message of Jesus alive? As we heard in the gospel, Jesus promised to send the Spirit into our hearts. And the Spirit has always been working in the church. The Spirit has always been working in the church. And we know that the Spirit will be with it. If you will, it's like Jesus has gone to heaven, and it's like a race. He's handing the baton to you and I and say, okay, now you fellows run with this church. I give you the Spirit, run with the church. And the Holy Father, Francis, has started the Synod. The Synod. To try, and the word Synod comes from the Greek word meaning walking together. The Holy Father says, we cannot impose things on people. People need to discuss and talk together until they arrive at a consensus of what is good for the gospel. And the Synod idea is we need to be a listening church. We need to listen. The Spirit does not just speak to the bishops. The Spirit speaks to everyone. To those who don't go to church even. What are the issues? What is the Spirit saying to us? And that was the Synod. Every parish in the world was supposed to have a listening session. And the bishops got together and they, for each country, had come up with something. And then all this went to Rome. For a couple of years, and try to listen to see where the Spirit is leading and guiding the church. And Pope Francis, shortly before he died, had a book published. He says a couple of things has affected the church tremendously. He was saying, COVID has done a lot of damage to the church. COVID changed the world. What lessons did we learn from COVID? Hopefully we learn to care for each other in special ways. We need to learn to care for each other in special ways, and that was one good thing. And he learned the meaning, what does it mean to gather as a community? When you can't gather as a community, we have problems. We can't gather as a community. And many people who went to Mass online are still going to Mass online. Even though COVID's over, they haven't come back to church. The lady said to me, I get up in the morning, get a cup of coffee in my pajamas and turn on the television. Well, I don't need to go to Mass. Do you miss the Eucharist? Do we miss the importance of the Eucharist? Do we understand what the Eucharist means in our lives? The Eucharist must be the center of our life. And that is another problem they had. In the surveys they did, the bishops in the state, 70% of the people who gathered church did not believe that Jesus was truly present in the Eucharist. It looks like we do it in memory, but no. Jesus said, take and eat, this is my body. Is it truly the body of Jesus? The Holy Father goes on. He says, besides the COVID, what it has done, our world is changing. The wars that are going on, artificial intelligence, what these things. And of course, in Canada here, we have the problem of our neighbor to the south, President Trump, in the tariffs. Our world and the way we look at things is different. The Holy Father said, I boil everything down, he said, and try to three things. He said, land, lodging, and labor. He said, first of all, the land. And what he meant by that is, he wrote a very powerful encyclical on the environment. He says, the land is God's gift to us. We must pass it on to the next generation. But what are we doing with our world? We are polluting it. We're cutting down the Amazon forest, which has the lungs of the world. We're polluting our waters, our streams. The fish can't live. We all know now the rainstorms and the fires and the hurricane. The world is changing. The climate is changing. And we must be responsible for it. As a Christian, he said, that's not politics. It's because you are a Christian that you must be concerned for your brothers and sisters in other parts of the world who perhaps be faced to leave their home and leave where they're living because of the climate change. It's a Christian thing to be concerned for other people in the world. It's not a political thing. Because we are Christian, we need to see Jesus in the face of others. So the land, and then he says about lodging. But lodging he's talking about, he says, so many people. There are millions and millions of people, hundreds of millions of people who have no home. They've had to leave because of war, because of changes in the environment. They're dying at sea. Even in our own country, look, housing people on the streets all around us. Hunger. People are dying of starvation. In our own, we have school programs. I go to the food bank in North Dartmouth. When I first started going there about 5 years ago, I used to have about 80. Now, last week there was 163. There's hunger in our world. People are hungry. Schools are hungry. And when people do not have enough to eat, what's doing? When we do not have lodging and food, we're really reaping mental problems now. All of the problems they're talking about young people, losing interest, and the mental problems that are arising, the depressions. Yes, the land and lodging are important. And then he talks about labor. Labor, that we have a right to work. We need to have a right to work. With artificial intelligence coming, different ways of working, and people are not making enough money to support themselves and their families. These are not political issues. They are gospel issues. Jesus told us to love the poor, the homeless, to care for them, so that all men and women can live in dignity. We have a right to that. We have a right to that. And that's the challenge that we have today. And Pope Francis had issued to us. And that's what the Synod is. The Synod, as I mentioned, he hoped that we would listen. And hopefully we will come to something, that we'll walk together to build a new church. But he reminds us, never forget the importance of the Eucharist. The center and source of our life as Catholics must be the Eucharist. In a few moments, the bread and wine will be placed on the altar, and I'll pray over it. And I believe at the core of my very being that bread is no longer bread, but it is truly the body of Jesus. Body, blood, soul, and divinity, as we were taught. Think of that. St. Augustine used to say, when I eat the bread that my mom makes, that bread becomes a part of me. But when I eat the bread that is the body of Jesus, I become a part of Jesus. I become attached to Jesus. And St. Teresa of Avila takes it a step further. She says, on earth, Jesus has no eyes or ears. hands or feet, but yours and mine. Because we have been nourished by the Eucharist, we have been changed. You and I must be the eyes and ears, the hands and feet of Jesus, reaching out to touch the world, which so much needs what the church has to offer. Life with Jesus. Isn't that what you all want? Don't lose hope. Never lose hope. As a Christian, we must always be hoping. The Spirit is with us. And as we heard in today's gospel, peace I give you, my peace I leave you. Peace, the Jewish people say shalom, or the Muslims salam, peace. Peace in the Christian sense is not the absence of war, but peace is to know that you're in right relationship. Are you in right relationship with God? Are you in right relationship with your neighbor? Are you in right relationship at peace with yourself? In the midst of all the confusion around us, we can have peace if we are in right relationship. So let us examine ourselves and see what our relationship is, because someday we're going to meet God face to face. When we do that, let us hope that He will say, peace be with you. Welcome home.